Well, welcome everybody. This is John Paul Dr. Speed Selling. This is the Raging Verbalist number 181. For those of you who are keeping track, check it off, move it along. Here we go. If you're here for the first time, welcome. Glad that you're here. You're back again. Well, good place to be. So, and for those who don't know what the Raging Verbalist is all about, it's topics that I talk and rant about, and we kind of steer clear of the political scene, but there's a lot of other stuff to cover. And if you want to check us out, obviously, if you're seeing this on YouTube, you already know where that is. Hit the subscribe, hit the like button, notifications if you want to be annoyed by this, or just make sure that you get here every week. Also, we're on Facebook with the Position to Win book group, and you can ask questions in there. Now, with me, as always, is the ever lovely Sandra. Sandra will be sitting in your place, asking the tough questions and getting me more raging. So, Sandra, welcome.
Hello, how are you? About to rage?
About to rage, yeah. I already know what we're talking about. So I've been revving and raging all morning, so I'm ready to go. So.
There you go. All right, so we'll just dive right in. So we're talking about Zoom. And why is it called The Ghost in the Machine?
All right, so I call it The Ghost in the Machine because there was an incredible book about technology called Soul of a New Machine, in which Tracy Kidder wrote this very long nonfiction, but kind of a page turner about how Data General, long gone, built this new computer. And one of the things that they talked about, which always stuck with me, is that they would chase these bugs, or they would call them ghosts in the machine. So when you're chasing a software problem, a hardware problem, whatever problem with technology, I just always think of it as a ghost, because there's a ghost in there somewhere. We could do a whole week about me complaining about a cell phone problem I had years ago. That may be another Raging Verbalist, but today we're going to talk about, well, what we're using right now, which is Zoom, and how Zoom, well, it's been some wacky stuff, and how I'm trying to deal with it.
All right, and what are the ghosts that you are referring to?
Well, if you've watched any Raging Verbalist, and hopefully you're an ardent viewer, is that you'll notice that there are fits and starts and dropouts here or there, or seconds that get lost, or maybe even more than a few seconds. And it isn't because I've got like Tourette's or got some other issue or something like that. It's because the technology just, flutters and, moves around and everything. The worst thing that can happen when I'm on a Zoom call is it will tell me that my internet connection is unstable. Great to tell me that. The first time I saw it, I went, oh my God, what does it mean? I use Zoom a lot, but this is just ridiculous. And it doesn't seem to be a really easy answer. And you're going to hear all of the things I've gone through and how much effort has gone into this whole thing. And well, we still having those glitches. In fact, when we were getting ready for the pre-call, it happens. And whenever it happens, at least Zoom gives me a little ring in my ear just to tell me, John, be annoyed. It just happened again. That's always a good thing, always a great thing. The other thing is that when you're making a great point, you're pitching something, you're going on, you're just on the roll, boom, and it craps out on you. People go, well, we got everything but, of course, the most important part.
And how long have you been using Zoom?
So my journey with Zoom, let's call it that, is I was in Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. I was between flights, and I was sitting there, had some time to kill, and I noticed that Zoom had these massive banner advertising, Zoom, 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 the right way to do meetings. I had been around, these kind of virtualizations or virtual meetings for a long time. In fact, when WebEx came out, that was during the Jurassic period. I was at a computer show when they still had one, and the WebEx booth was huge before they were bought out, by the way. And they said, and they looked at what I was doing, Dr. Speed Selling. Boy, your clients are going to love this. And I sat down and I did a virtual conference with the team right there. awesome, amazing, great, except that it was under the most ideal conditions that you could ever have. And turned out that that wasn't close to being ready for prime time. Then I went to, it's a meeting or just a meeting or my meeting or whatever the hell that, those guys called it, and lived through that kind of turmoil. I've used a whole bunch of different of these, and all I can tell you is that all of them had issues and problems and things like that. Now, I'm sitting there waiting for my flight. I'm looking at the big banner. I call the team at Zoom and I said, okay, I'm looking at this. You got me to call. I'm probably the right kind of person. Talk to me. Tell me what we can do. And they said, oh yeah, you're the right person. And I always get a little bit nervous when people say it quite that way, but feel like I'm going to, maybe I'm the mark in the room. And they described what they had. They had two services. One was meeting. This is in like 2016, 2017. And they had also a webinar. So I said, hey, I got a credit card. Sign me up for not one, but both of them. By the way, I would tell you, when you're in that kind of ether exuberance, be careful because you'll probably end up doing something stupid. Anyway, I signed up and I thought, man, this is great. These guys are going to take care of this, because I had gone to a system called Click Meeting. I don't even know if they're still around. Disaster, really a disaster. And Zoom kind of met that happy point. And when I signed up, they offered incredible customer support. We'll talk about that later on. And went out and got started. Now, the learning curve of all of these tools is pretty big, pretty tall. Also, documentation, well, it's just a little 3-letter word called nil, like nil, not any documentation at all. And so you got to learn on your own. You got to stumble your way through it. Well, if you're going to do real money calls, not a good idea. So that's where I got started on Zoom back in those days. I was working on a project called the Discovery 2, which I was launching, and I absolutely needed and I'm not going to say flawless, because that's like, I'm not that naive. I wanted something that was functional, that would work in my kind of environment, in my kind of situation. And that's how I got kicked off my relationship with Zoom. One of the problems was that the webinar thing turned out that was a super nightmare, because I do webinars. However, I'm more interactive than most people. So literally, if somebody needed to ask a question, they would have to, click a little thing, and a hand would come up, and then I would have to notify it. Then I'd have to, raise them up and lower them down. And come on, man. I don't have enough time. When you're in the zone, last thing you want to do, I don't have like somebody in a truck who can do the direction and stuff. So literally, I had to have people and pay somebody to be on there. And it's like, no, it's okay. So that was my kind of kickoff. And then I had to cancel webinar. And you would think that I took food out of somebody's grandmother's mouth, because they're like, well, we really didn't set it up for you could cancel at any time. Took a lot of John and talking and saying, hey, I bought the wrong thing. And yes, they did relinquish it, and we wrapped up. I had that for a while. Not a fan. The webinar stuff is too restricted. And the thing is that you need to actually have a monk or a director who can run the damn thing. And if you don't, well, then you're screwed.
All right. And what did you originally want to do with Zoom?
Well, since I have a weekly, start as a teleseminar, then it grew from beyond that, called Speed Start Monday. And by the way, I've just done number 972. For anybody who wants to keep track of that, that's 50 a year, coming up on 20 years in January timeframe of 24. And since I was doing that every week, one of the big things that my audience kept saying is, wouldn't it be great if we could see you doing this? Now, it didn't quite make as much sense to me, because I don't usually show slides. I don't have, animation. Here's my animation. I don't have that. So I said, okay. So I got this thing called Zoom. I thought, well, what a great way to learn. And by the way, it did make people excited that I could, be seen and they could be seen, and we had this more of a group effect. So I had it for that. And then I really knew I needed it for discovery. Much higher end live event was coming up, and I do a bunch of free event webinars, and I do post event webinars. And then we also pitch the event, and we were starting to use webinars. Again, I call them webinars. Right now, I just use meeting. So that's what I originally wanted it to do. Now, because of that, I knew that this is a direction that the world is going to. I mean, if you hear me ranting and complaining and pissing and moaning, it is because I want this to work. See, it's one thing that if you complain about some piece of technology, but inherently you don't necessarily want it to work. You're like, well, it doesn't do it. No, I want it to work. I want it to work because I want to be able to sell this way. I'd love to not have to get on another airplane and go see people or go drive a bunch of miles and see people. I'm going to tell you that there is not a single tool out there that I've worked with that gets close to this. Now, and I've had people say, well, John, these guys, and they'll point out to some kind of fringe company who's like designed a system to work. All of them are stupid expensive, and all of them just assume that you got a whole lot of time to do all that stuff. So I didn't have time to do that. So that's what I originally intended Zoom to do. Now, what I didn't understand is what it was going to eventually lead to. And what it was eventually going to lead to is the fact that this book, Remote Work for a Better World, was in fact driven by the thing. I was using Zoom, and I knew Zoom was going to be a successful thing. I didn't notice, I didn't buy the stock of where the stock was going to go. So that's, by the way, available exclusively on Amazon Kindle. Now, on the other side, I was already in the process of finishing and launching a book with my partner, Gabe Batista, which is most businesses fail in the first 5 minutes. It just takes them 3 to 5 years to realize it. Available physically from us at positiontowinbook.com, positiontowinbook.com. Ask for an autograph and you'll get it. Ask for an inscription and you'll get it. Also, you can go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, wherever books are sold, they can actually order it because it's a physical book. And it's also available in every digital form that we can think of, Kindle, Nook, and Apple iBooks. The point of it is that the ability to use a tool like Zoom was critical because I did a lot of interviews. And when you're doing interviews, even if they're just going to be recorded, when you do interviews, having that connection, being able to see the person who's interviewing you, works in a very positive way. So I have a need, I have a desire, and I have a drive. So I want this technology to work. So just that's what we're talking about.
And what exactly are you chasing now?
Well, the issue that I have been chasing now for quite some time is what I call the stutter effect. And that is you're sitting there and you're talking. By the way, it just happened on cue, is that you're sitting there talking, you're doing what you're doing. And in the most benign, that means it isn't really a big giant pain in the ass and a gashing wound, is that it'll just stutter for a second or a half a second or something like that. That's annoying. But in bigger times or bigger circumstances, that stutter or that delay or that problem, and this is why if you're seeing me wear AirPods instead of wearing my normal microphone, I'd like to do, is I can't do the audio through the laptop, through their app at the same time without this thing getting way out of line. I mean, it just blows up. So that's what I've been chasing, is this stutter effect. And I have got several people, technical people I've talked to who I know a lot about things and have worked with them to try to improve it. And you're going to hear all the things I've done. I'm now down to, my choice is to get maybe 10,000 Tibetan monks praying for a clear connection or something. But it's very annoying. And now I could fix this. I'm just going to say that I could fix this. I'll give you the fix right now by doing a separate audio recording of myself, having Sandra do a separate audio recording of herself. And then that way we have 2 separate audio recordings. And then she could set it up onto whatever software she uses to do the post-production, line all this up, bring it all together. But now 3 things happen. Number 1 is that it's longer. Number 2 is that it costs a lot of money to do all that stuff. And number 3 is that, in my opinion, is that if you, especially the way I do things, if I have to fix it in post, and I know there are some people who spend gazillion hours editing and doing all this other stuff, good on you. If that's what you want to spend your life doing, not me. I want to go out there and run a business and not have to do that. So that's the ghost I've been chasing. And whenever it says internet is unstable, that's when you really know that the spam is going to hit the fan. But it does the stuttering stuff. It does all these other glitches on a really regular basis. And I have yet to have a call in a long time that this isn't just taking place. Now you may say, John, did it start out that way? It probably did, but it was less noticeable because, you know, their software was different. Also, Zoom drives me crazy by giving me all kinds of offers that don't apply to me. And it's like, guys, can I answer a questionnaire so you don't send me stupid things? I don't have 500 people on this thing live at one time. So, all right, so that's what I've been chasing. I've been chasing that.
All right. And so what is your advice to content creators?
Well, my advice is that Zoom should be a really good way for you to capture content fast and easy and all those things. I know some of you out there are trying to, you know, build up some massive studio. I too agree with that. I have purchased lots of audio, video equipment. I have things from long ago. What I will tell you is that if you're going to do that, you might check out Remote Work for a Better World, because we talk about some of the things to improve Zoom. I've applied all of them so far, by the way. But also, if you're a content creator, do not believe, and this is a mistake that we made, which was we tried to live cast through Zoom, through Facebook, and that early on was a non-starter. It just was a disaster. Sandra, to her patience, said, let's see if we can make this thing work. And even though, she had those good Midwest vibes, it just crapped out. It just, was torn up. But I'm going to tell you, if you have Zoom, you should use it to create content, because you already have it. You already have your own little mini studio. The real killer is that how do you, make this thing work, and how do you put it together in a way that will work for you? And content creators, you're going to keep creating content. I'll tell you what I really missed early on is that create content. And yes, I understand the ever rising production values that are going on. If something is interesting, if something is good, people will watch it, even if there's, production quality problems. If they're watching and commenting about how this was produced or directed, or, did they do a swipe or did they do a jump cut? If that's what they're thinking, then they're not listening to you unless you're teaching them how to do those things. So great content, use Zoom to do that, because it is a very capable, though flawed, piece of software.
All right. And which steps have you taken to try and fix this?
So this is where I get to be cathartic and tell you all of the things that all of the experts told me. So the first thing that people started to tell me is that because, and I'm using Windows 11 for all of you who want to know that. And what I did was I had a laptop, which I bought specifically because I thought I was going to use it for Zoom. Ended up gunking it up, easy to do. And I didn't have enough memory. So I had 8 gigs of memory. There should be a universal law, that you can't buy a machine with 8 gigs of RAM, because it ain't enough. And it ain't enough, bad English, correct way to say it, because it's just not enough, because Windows is a pig. If you have any kind of browser open, pig. And then now you got Zoom, another thing, not good. So that's one of the things I absolutely knew. So what I did, though, before I went out and did anything, is that because it said my internet connection was unstable, is I called my provider, which is Spectrum, and I said, hey guys, I'm having problems. They sent a man in a truck, and he came out and he replaced the wire that went into my house, and went through all of that, put in a new modem, updated that. That, by the way, created its own problem. He had to come back out, replaced the one that he just gave me because it turned out having a, infant mortality problem, replaced that, and got it working. And by the way, I bumped my speed at that point in time up. So I went from 200 megabits per second to 500 download and 20 up. So I bumped that. So that was like first step. By the way, did it eliminate the problem or did it move the problem along? Now, lots of times, ghosts in the machines, you're chasing a problem that just keeps moving. It doesn't get totally fixed. So I did that. Now, I use what's called an Eero, E-E-R-O. I highly recommend it. It's an Amazon company. They don't pay me any money, so don't think I'm getting rich off this thing. But I had an Eero mesh in my house and had this thing all set up. And turns out that the units that I own, which were Gen 1, were going end of life. Boo-hoo. And they said, okay, you got to replace them. So I upgraded my entire mesh. Well, that sounded pretty cool. But then somebody said, wait a second, you're using Wi-Fi, even if it's in your house and even if it's got speed. If you could just have a direct link to the internet and have the fewest hops, put a hole in my wall, ran the cable, plug it in. I now have a direct connection. Oh, happy days. Still having the stutter, still having the problem, still having all that stuff. Well, that really sucked. So I said, okay, what I need to do is get a faster laptop. I need to get a more capable laptop. So why don't I do that? So I'm sitting there and I'm actually on the road and I'm reading, this is, you're talking about exciting reading. I'm reading the Costco flyer sent me, and I noticed that coming up, Dell has 40 gigabytes of RAM, 40 gigabytes of RAM. And I said to myself, if that ain't enough, this is ridiculous. Now, by the way, if you go onto Zoom, they'll tell you that you can get away with like 4 gigs and, blah, blah, blah. Bullshit. I don't think that works. I don't believe it. So I put in the 40 gigs. I do my transfer, move over, still having the problem. In fact, had to go from having headset here, I'll show headset, and went from the headset, which I really absolutely love, better audio quality. Clients have said better audio quality. However, it's not a stable audio quality. And I ended up going to AirPods. Again, nobody's paying me any money. It's just flying out at me. And I had to do that. So now I had to do something else, which is I said, okay, somebody who I know said, well, John, maybe you've got too many background tasks running on the laptop. Could be. So he said, here's what you should do is you should reboot before you get started every single time. Usually not an easy thing to do, but okay, I'm going to do that. And then you should go in the task manager and start killing tasks. Now, if in fact this had flawlessly eliminated the problem and let me go back to the headset from the AirPods, I would have been ecstatic. However, it didn't do it. We kept running into the problems. So then I thought, well, maybe what I should do is I should upgrade. Now, in the meantime, by the way, before I get to the final upgrade, is that I go on to Zoom, which now customer service has gone from some of the best when I started to really non-available because I'm not paying them enough money. And I would have paid them money if they would have fixed the problem. So I had to go out and I had to get an appointment. So I get signed up for an appointment, and then I have to wait 2 weeks. And then I end up talking to somebody whose name she says is, Betty or Shirley or whatever, but she's in the Philippines. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, one of the businesses I'm in, we have somebody from the Philippines who works for us. But what she is she is supposedly the expert, because I had explicitly written a lot more than I like to write, what had gone on and all the things I'd done. Of course, none of that makes it to her. She then gets on the phone and she goes, well, sir, I'm here to make this thing all work and all better, and kiss your boo-boo and make it go away. And she then proceeds to tell me all the things I need to do. And I said, why don't you wait and hold off on that list that you're going to read from? Because clearly she's reading off of her screen. Let me tell you all the things that I've done. And then I recount to her all the various upgrades, all the various things I've done, all the various pieces that have happened, all of those things. By the way, if they had documentation that said, run your system with this kind of lean setup or whatever that is, and life will be, as the Brits say, tickety boo, I would do it. It doesn't exist. So she tells me that this is kind of a new problem, though when you go out onto the website, when you go out into their knowledge base and having people there, people are bitching about this left, right, and center, like thousands, like 3,400 entries in this thing, and it's the same or similar types of things. And she walks me through this whole thing, and I said, okay, why is it still happening? She goes, well, I'm going to turn your information over to technical support, and they will get back to you, which has now been months. In one final attempt to, if you will, overwhelm this ghost, overwhelm this problem, I went back to Spectrum and said, hey, can you guys bump me up in more speed? And of course, the first thing they say is, you betcha. A lot more money. So I had to negotiate the fee down, told them I would leave and go do something stupid, or, I've got a razor and I'm going to cut myself or something to get them to at least listen. And the guy gave me a better deal. So now I have a gig down and 40 up. And I thought, man, this is going to help me out. This is going to work so well. It normalized. It was just all working along. And then Sandra and I do a test call, and it does basically the same thing, lesser, but the same thing. So that's the ghost I've been chasing the machine. I have no answer as of right now how to make this work the way, of course, all of the cool internet advertising says it's going to work. And all I can say is, if you're out there, and put it in the comments if you know how to do that, or contact me through Position to Win group or Position to Win book group on Facebook. But I'd love to find a way to actually remedy and solve this problem, because it is a ghost in the machine. People ask me what I think about technology. I love technology. What I want is the promise, the person who writes the sales letter, to be the person who delivers the stuff, because usually there's a difference, there's a dissonance between the two, and that is what drives people crazy. By the way, all this raining shit down on people about why remote work doesn't work, why somebody like Martha Stewart grits her teeth and says, I can't stand another Zoom meeting, it's because they don't work really, really well. And Zoom has gotten so big, and by the way, they're trying to find other stuff to sell. So why do we need to fix the meeting when we have to sell people phone services, and we have to sell this and this and this? Because they can't meet their numbers just fixing the meeting. So that's where we stand as of right now, and that's how it all fits in. And I'm going to continue to chase the ghost machine. In fact, I had a purpose-built machine, which I have not put online yet, that I'm going to test, and we're going to see if my purpose-built machine can make this work. Stick with me, because this is an ongoing saga, and if you're having problems, all I can tell you is all of these other things, by the way, all of the improvements made other things work better. What they didn't do is eliminate the problems with Zoom. And with that, I want to thank everybody who has made it through to the end of this. I wish you well. I wish you happy, high-speed internet, and not having anything saying that your internet is unstable and the shit's going to hit the fan, and that you have a great rest of the week, wherever you're at. And we'll see you in the next Raging Verbalist. So for myself, John Paul Mendoza, Dr. Speed Selling, and the ever-lovely Sandra, go and have a great one, and hopefully you don't have ghosts in your machine that you're chasing.